Welcome to the Microgreens Mastery podcast. I'm your host, Jonah Krochmalnek. Together, we'll explore the art of turning tiny seeds into a thriving microgreens empire, sharing insights, coveted secrets, and strategic wisdom from building one of Canada's largest microgreens farms. Stay tuned for thought-provoking conversations with leading figures in the world of microgreens. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. On today's episode, we have Nicole Harris from Tiny Greens Farm in Hudson Valley, New York. On this episode, we're going to talk all about the nutritional benefits of microgreens, important mindset habits to form as a farmer, marketing tips and tricks for selling to restaurants, and so much more. Let's get right into it. Hey, Nicole, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So let's just get right into it. I'd love to hear how you first got interested in microgreens and kind of the backstory of how your farm actually came to be.
Yeah, so before growing microgreens, I was living and working in New York City in the fashion and entertainment industry before I made a drastic career change for personal health reasons. For 20 years, I was dealing with chronic Lyme disease. It went undiagnosed for 4 years as a child, and I was super sick, and it just wasn't getting better. So back then I didn't have this foundational knowledge of health to really handle it. So I knew I needed to gain this knowledge and I needed to really make a drastic change in my life, even if I wanted to have a family one day. So I moved out of New York City. I changed my job. I started working in a wellness center as a clinical assistant. And my husband and I purchased a home back in the Hudson Valley where we grew up. And we started dabbling in growing our own food and raising chickens and honeybees. And now we have two beautiful boys. And I experienced the healing power of whole foods and eating as local to the land as possible. And this has really started to become my passion. And we also have an amazing abundance of farms in our area too. So I was able to really experience all of the, other than growing our own, experiencing local food to our land. So for 10 years now, I've been working in the field of holistic nutrition as a certified clinician in whole food nutrition and nutritional therapy practitioner. And I understand how real food plays a role in our health journeys. And so back to the microgreens, after my last certification, I knew I just wanted to do something outside of the box. So I decided to combine my love of wellness and agriculture and start a micro farm. And I knew as a nutritionist, I wanted to begin with microgreens because of their nutrient density. And so I decided to shift from nutritional services with one-on-ones to and guiding people on what to eat to actually growing nourishing food for our community.
That's awesome. I feel a lot of farms start with the nutritional understanding that like microgreens are so nutritionally dense, but to have all that actual knowledge base prior to actually growing microgreens, I feel would just make it so much easier to explain to customers like why they're so valuable, which I'm really excited to get in with you today is like the weeds of why microgreens are so nutrient dense and why people should be consuming them just as an average consumer that wants to improve their health. When did you, I guess, move to the farm you're on? And then when did you start growing microgreens in that
Yeah,
process?
so actually it's all on our property. We have like a homestead, we have like 3 acres, and the previous owners were artists. So they created this huge studio garage with like skylight and wood burning
Wow.
stove, and it's beautiful. So we actually built a portion of that into our indoor vertical farm. At first, we started obviously at home, in the home and just kind of research and development and experimenting for like a year or two. And we've been in business for 3 years now, Tiny Greens Farm. So everything is on our property, and it's a vertical indoor setup.
Awesome. It sounds like you're living the homestead dream. It like when you just explained this building, I just pictured it and I was like, wow, this sounds very like magical and very beautiful. And
Thank
I know
you.
upstate New York is a pretty
It's
beautiful
pretty.
place in and of itself. So I can imagine the how nice it is to be in that kind of environment. Very peaceful. with all the animals, and then be able to grow microgreens as like, part of a income source and to feed people really healthy food. So
It's
that's really
nice.
cool.
It's nice. We have agriculture and other farms around us, so it's like there's cows or my neighbors, you know. So it's really nice to be in this area. But yeah, my husband built the entire farm, and he always says like I should have built it bigger because now we're in that
Yeah, that
position.
expansion
But
phase. It's not a bad thing to like, because if you overbuild, it can be one expensive, and you're not
that's
guaranteed
true.
that you're going to meet that demand. So,
That's true.
there's benefits both ways, but I think it's not a bad thing to size it, a little bit larger than your current capacity, and then when you need to, you can always
Build
expand
it.
in the future.
Yeah.
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 But I'd love to know kind of like uh, who you're selling the products to, what that kind of breakdown is between direct to consumer, retail, restaurant, and or distributors, and why you kind of chose those markets to sell to.
Yeah, so we sell mostly to restaurants, vineyards. There's vineyards across the river, caterers, cafes, but we also sell to farm stores. I also offer an add-on, a microgreen add-on for their bigger CSAs in the summer and the winter, and in a few grocery stores. And we also have a home subscription. So we like to do, obviously, have a few outlets of revenue. But I would say the breakdown, if like percentage wise, I was like trying to think of this, I would say like 60% maybe restaurants, 30% retail, and like 10 to 20 direct to consumer, which we would love to build more of.
That's
And it's
awesome. Yeah.
funny, yeah. So like when we're here to talk about nutrition for microgreens and how I came from a nutrition background. So when I first started the business, I thought, oh, I'm going to get in health food stores and just, direct to consumer and like really build this up. But we have in the Hudson Valley, we have the Culinary Institute of America. So we have just an abundance of chefs and amazing restaurants. And they're so talented, and they really just took to it with the quality and the flavor profile. And so I started, that kind of took off, which was surprising.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes the market finds you
Right.
more so than you find the market. I've noticed in the years of running my farm that sometimes, like for example, product breakdown, like you'll have an idea what you want to grow, but then the customers will give you feedback, and that will determine often what you grow. So it sounds like just where you're located, the restaurant industry just made a whole lot of sense given the
Mhm.
demographic and the institute that's there. So but it sounds like you have a good mix of like a good diversity of different customers. But you said you did start with direct to consumer and retail. So when did you kind of switch to start taking on more restaurants, or start taking on restaurants?
Yeah, so when we first launched, we did like a CSA type model with the microgreens, and it was nice to kind of have that in the beginning to build structure and boundaries when I first started. And then as I built up that, and it was, I guess I started, it was like kind of during the COVID time. So, and then like right after things started opening up, but people were still a little hesitant to go into the stores. So we were all like free local delivery and just like contactless,
Yeah,
drop off. So that really helped. It was bigger in the beginning because of that. Um, I guess as things kind of opened up and things kind of dropped off. And then you get
yeah,
this seasonal flow of people having their own gardens and things like that. But that started it. And then as I was building that, I just started to approach, like health food cafes. And then I just started reaching out to local restaurants just kind of in the area that used I know source from local farms. So I knew that would be a benefit to them. So that's kind of how I started. And then while I was doing the direct consumer, I started to reach out, and then it just kind of took off from there. Just tried to build my route around that, trying to be strategic with that.
for sure. Yeah, and it's great to have that to diversify as well from the seasonality. Like where
Mhm.
you are is pretty much as cold as where I am in Canada,
Yes.
and the tourism season is generally going to be stronger in the summer months than in the winter months.
Yeah.
So restaurants generally in this climate do better in the summer months, and then retail I find generally does better in the winter months, and direct to consumer, because there's just not as much local available in the winter. But in the summer is there's lots available local, but restaurants often will use microgreens in their
Yes.
dishes, and that's their busy season. So they really work well to complement each other. With COVID and all that stuff, with the lockdowns, like it's always good to have a balance between your customers. So I'm glad to hear that that you have that already.
Thank you. Yeah.
Given that you have these different outlets, like how many varieties of microgreens do you grow? And then what do you find is the best selling products or mixes on the direct to consumer and restaurant side?
Yeah. So let's see. So let's see. The my popular let's see, I gotta pause for a second and think about this. Yeah, so the popular mixes for my chefs in the restaurant side would have to be, I would say, twofold. I do a chef's blend, and that's just a big mix of different brassicas, radishes, and red amaranth for color. I know there's distributors close that kind of call it like a rainbow mix, but I kind of called it a chef's blend. And I actually met with a local chef, and we kind of created this first, one of my first customers, and she helped me create it, which is great. Um, and then recently I just added on a farmer's mix. So I plan for the grow, but it's just everything extra that I have during harvest day. I just mix everything together, like every variety you could think of. And I do grow about, depending on the demand, because I am grow to order, but I do offer over like 50 varieties of microgreens. Um, and it's just like a mix of everything that kind of took off as well. Like, oh, just give me, farmer's choice or farmer's mix, give me whatever you have. So that's for the restaurant side. For the retail side and the stores, I think what the most popular would be more broccoli is definitely obviously, but like the more popular ones, as everyone finds, is the broccoli, the pea shoots, the radishes. I just started adding in some micro arugula to the stores. They took that on. What I really love to do actually during the holidays, one of my stores, I do a holiday blend, and that's between like November and, up until like New Year's. I do like a holiday blend for them, like just a limited edition, try to kind of get them excited for microgreens during the holidays.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no, this is why I love talking to farmers because like there's always good ideas that come out. So like as an example, we always called our product the rainbow mix. But if you're targeting chefs and it's
Mhm.
called the chef mix, like it sounds so simple, but it's like, oh, this is made for us. So Christmas season, like green and red, you just need
Right,
a red variety like amaranth or beets or something, and then a
right.
green variety, and you have a holiday blend, which
Yep.
is pretty cool. I would have never even thought of that, and I think that's an ingenious way to like promote microgreens from a marketing perspective. To just
Yeah,
kind of sometimes a name change, as simple as it is, or a packaging change, can really make a big difference in
definitely.
someone wanting to try the product.
Another thing I found is I know different stores, like to offer different things than other local grocery stores. So I have like a small, no, actually they're not pretty small. They're a big farm, but they're close to one of my grocery stores. So they wanted to offer something different. So I actually make like a special farm blend for them, just in their farm store. So it's different. And then I
Yeah,
just
that's
make sure
cool.
whatever microgreens are not in that store, they carry as well. So I'm just
Yeah.
very sensitive to that fact too of like, oh, there's different ones in different stores to not only help our business but to help theirs as well.
For sure. Awesome. That's really cool. I love that. Now this is the part I'm most excited for, given your experience and your expertise, is the nutrition of microgreens. Even for me, I don't even know as an expert in the microgreens industry what the real truth is on, like you hear microgreens have 40 times the nutrition, microgreens have 10 times the nutrition. Like people are kind of throwing out different numbers all over the place. So I'd love to hear from your perspective how microgreens compare to the mature counterparts in
Yes.
terms of nutritional value.
Yes. So when you get into microgreens, is all like the microgreen farmers know. There's that one study back in 2012, the researchers with the University of Maryland College of Agriculture and Natural Resources and the USDA, they completed one of the first studies to determine the level of nutrients in microgreens compared to their mature counterparts. And this is the study they found that depending on the plant, the microgreens contain mature counterparts like vitamin C and vitamin E. So that study, it's hard to read, these publishing journals,
Yeah.
but this study actually found like there's an example in there of red cabbage microgreens. They have 40 times more vitamin E, 6 times more vitamin C, and 69 times more vitamin K
Wow.
than mature red cabbage. And then they also looked at cilantro, red amaranth, and green daikon radish. And they also had the highest concentrations of phytonutrients in this study. And that's what we're kind of going to dive into today is like people don't understand that this is like a lesser known health benefit is these phytonutrients.
I know that there's been a lot of studies on sulforaphane in
Yeah.
broccoli sprouts, and I
Hmm.
feel like that's part of the reason that broccoli microgreens are as popular as they are, is because everyone kind of knows them for the health benefits. There was that Joe Rogan podcast with
Right.
Dr. Rhonda Patrick, and then it's just kind of like the information just kind of
Hmm.
flew out there, not just from broccoli microgreens, broccoli sprouts, which I think microgreens are much more nutrient dense and less risky as a food product.
Yes.
But a lot of studies that have been done have also been done on broccoli sprouts, but they
Hmm.
both have very high levels of sulforaphane.
Definitely.
But yeah, so I'd love to hear about like what these phytonutrients are, what they do for the body, and what their benefits are from a health perspective.
Sure, yeah. So with Tiny Greens Farm, we say we're growing functional food with gratitude and joy. So microgreens are a natural functional food that contains a wide range of vitamins, minerals, and these protective phytonutrients. So functional foods offer health benefits beyond their daily nutrition. Their daily nutritional value. And we're just beginning to understand, as you just said, these phytonutrients and how they connect to our health, like the broccoli with the sulforaphane. Another example actually is buckwheat microgreens. They actually contain quercetin and rutin, which is a metabolite of quercetin.
Mm.
And if you're familiar with like quercetin supplements, that's great for anti-inflammatory and, I shouldn't say anti-inflammatory. It helps support a healthy inflammatory response, which is what we all want. So that's like another phytonutrient found in buckwheat microgreens, for example. But so these phytonutrients are actually natural plant derived compounds that support life and offer protection innately in plants, but for plant eating humans as well. So for plants, phytonutrients are important for healthy growth. They protect them from UV radiation. They help deter pests and they provide vibrant colors to attract pollinators. And they play a role in tissue healing following an injury to the plant. So in the human body, they kind of work similar. Sorry, phytonutrients can actually influence health in the human body by acting as direct antioxidants to reduce oxidative stress. They stimulate production of internal antioxidant systems, and they support metabolic systems and regulate inflammatory responses. So it's really this antioxidant activity, in summary, that these phytonutrients have, and it just helps promote good health by assisting the body in neutralizing these free radicals. That is like they're basically a chemical byproduct that can help that harm, I'm sorry, our cell membranes and they damage our DNA. And this is what causes the chronic conditions and the cancer and osteoporosis and all of that.
Yeah. Wow. But it's kind of interesting you said that with buckwheat. I used to grow buckwheat and I
Oh, okay.
stopped many years ago because the shells were such a
All the
pain to take
seeds.
off. But it's
Yeah.
funny because I actually went to a naturopath because I've had seasonal allergies since I was about 16.
Mm,
And I've had to take Claritin kind of antihistamines. And I went to this naturopath and he actually gave me quercetin to take with vitamin C. And I
mhm.
was pleasantly surprised. It takes some time to build up in your system, but it worked very well for that purpose. Like an allergy is an inflammatory response in your body to something that it thinks is foreign. So by
Yes.
being able to eat buckwheat microgreens and have your seasonal allergies be minimized, maybe not eliminated, but at least somewhat minimized, is like a pretty cool health benefit of buckwheat. But it's kind of cool because that means that you can, in theory, extract quercetin from buckwheat microgreens um,
Yes.
for making supplements, which I think is really fascinating because it's cool because you can grow them year round indoors, and
Yes.
then I feel that there's so many benefits to microgreens that haven't been explored yet on a supplementation perspective
Mhm.
to extract. Like if let's say, sorry, which nutrient was 69 times higher in vitamin C or sorry in
Vitamin K.
azure?
It was vitamin K.
Vitamin
Mhm.
K. So in theory, you could take 69 times less bulk material to get the same amount
Mhm.
of vitamin
K.
K.
Right.
Um, so I think that's like pretty fascinating use case for microgreens in the future once they,
Yeah.
I think they're really starting to take off in popularity, but when they
Yeah.
when they're like a household name, which I think will happen, that's a really cool benefit of that.
Yeah, and if you
Um,
think about it simply, it's like everything that the plant needs is in that seed, all the nutrients. I mean, you get support from the soil if you're soil based too. If you're growing them in soil, you get even more. But everything the plant needs is in that tiny seed. So the fact that we're harvesting them so young, it's just so potent and so powerful. There's just one more study too, back in 2002. And I'm happy to share like with anyone who is interested different studies other than that 2012 one, but there was one in 2002 by the Journal of Nutrition, and this is more about functional food, how it represents one of the most intensely investigated and widely promoted areas in the food and nutrition sciences today. That's because a diet that includes plenty of functional foods is one of the best protectors against common chronic diseases like heart disease, cancer, osteoporosis, and diabetes and stroke. And that's quoted in the in the study.
wow. Yeah. I,
Yeah.
I've always heard this fact where you always have cancer in your body. It's just like will it develop into something more serious. Having things that are antioxidant and anti-inflammatory that you're consuming will minimize the risk that those cancer cells that are always present in your body will not be able to turn into what we consider as cancer in our society, where it actually will cause harm to the human body.
Exactly.
So I'd love to hear if there's any, given your many years of nutrition experience, um, if there's any surprising or maybe lesser known health benefits with consuming microgreens, that either microgreens growers or just consumers are listening would find interesting.
Yeah, we kind of covered a little bit with like the misconception of sprouts versus microgreens. We covered it with, the phytonutrients, but also there's also this like lesser known thing, microgreens, but health food in general that, we think we're going to eat a healthy food and we're going to take all these supplements and it's going to make us healthy. And it's yes and no. It's not always what you eat, but it's what your body absorbs that counts. So you can eat the most perfect diet, all the microgreens in the world, the most expensive supplements, but if your body's not digesting those foods and those supplements, it's not absorbing, assimilating, and getting those nutrients into your cells for health. So having good digestion is key. I found within my trainings that's actually one of the foundations of health is having good digestion. And this is what I teach in my local workshops and, guide my nutrition clients with. But microgreens are a great food because they're so small and harvested so young, they're broken down much easier in the body than their adult counterparts too. So you think they're more nutritious, but they're also more easily digestible in the body. And some people that have chronic digestive issues can actually tolerate, if they can't tolerate eating raw vegetables, I found that they can tolerate eating microgreens, which is really fascinating.
Wow, yeah, that
Um,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's fascinating. I never even thought of it that way, but it makes complete sense. It's like a tender young plant that is it's more vulnerable in nature. It doesn't have the defense mechanisms with like having strong, sturdy stems and fibrous leaves that are
So
harder
true.
for insects to chew through. They're very tender, so
Right.
it would make sense that they're a lot easier to digest. And I've never even thought about that, but that's so cool to
Yeah.
think of it from that perspective. I think
Yeah.
it's a great point. Like you can eat the healthiest diet. And I've been there. Like I've
Yeah.
been through my own
Yeah.
health journey
Yeah.
before I started microgreens with like having leaky gut and becoming allergic to pretty much everything I ate. And it didn't matter. I ate the healthiest food. I was so fixated on eating healthy food, but my body was not absorbing that food. So I could eat, you know, like a perfect diet, but I'm not getting the end result of having improvement in health because of digestion, which is where all your nutrition has to come pretty
Mhm.
much, unless you're gonna like get vitamin injections in your blood, like it's gonna come through your
Right.
digestion, all your
Right.
calories, all the nutrients, all the phytonutrients, and without having good digestion, it doesn't matter what you're eating. Like you can eat good food, bad food. If it's not being digested, it's not becoming a part of you. And there's that saying, you are what you eat. But I
Mhm.
think a better saying is you are what you digest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, definitely. So there's actually a way that microgreens can be paired with food so you can digest them easily as well. Because microgreens, they, like I said, they have a wide range of vitamins. So most vitamins are water soluble, like vitamin B and C, which means they dissolve in water, but the others are fat soluble, which means they are much better so the fat soluble vitamins in the human diet are vitamins A, D, E, and K. I think I have a few examples. So like buckwheat and speckled pea, they have vitamin A and E. Sunflower has vitamin D, A, D, and E. And like a lot of the brassicas, they have vitamins A, E, and K. So like there's a wide range of them. But so eating them with a fat and pairing these microgreens with a healthy fat can also help you digest and absorb, I should say, most of the nutrients in the plants.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. I've heard of that concept before, but I didn't really think about applying it to microgreens. But that's great because like a lot of people eat microgreens as a salad or in
Right.
something that has like some sort of like dressing, like a salad kind of dressing. So if it has like ideally olive oil, avocado oil,
Right.
or coconut oil, something like that, would be getting that healthy fat, which is good for you, and then also allowing you to absorb more nutrients from the microgreens, which is
Yeah, and even adding
yeah,
to that salad, right? Avocado or sprouted nuts or seeds or olives. Olives are a really
mm,
great one too.
that's a good
But
point.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I always think of oil as the easiest way to get fat, but
Yes.
yeah, the whole food version is definitely like
Yeah.
an
Oh, there's so
avocado.
many.
Yeah, an avocado is definitely going to be healthier. And
Yeah,
avocado makes great dressings, by the way. For
it
those that
does.
haven't tried it, it blends great, like really great
Yeah.
into a dressing.
Even smoothies, because I know like bananas are really high in sugar. You could actually like half the bananas with avocado to like get the creaminess too.
Oh, interesting.
Hmm.
Okay, I never thought about this. See, this
Yeah.
is great. This is why I was so excited because like there's so many things that I can learn and how I can incorporate because I
Mhm.
still consume microgreens and can still consume tons of greens. I have a juicer, I blend. I never thought to add avocado to a smoothie. I
Yeah.
always add like frozen fruit, which is great. Like it adds like that sweetness, which is nice. But it,
Mhm.
having like a lot of frozen fruit all the time, it's adding that sugar. Whereas if you add that fat, it fills you up faster, and you're getting all the benefits. So you can make an avocado microgreen smoothie would be a cool idea too, with some sort
Mhm.
of like milk or plant-based milk or something.
Yeah, like so if you do like an avocado, maybe like a half a banana, half of an avocado, like almond milk, or I also do a lot of studies back with Weston A. Price, so we do like raw milk smoothies sometimes too. We get directly from the farm, if those who tolerate it anyway.
Yeah,
And then some fruit to kind of sweeten it up a little bit, or even add in a nut butter too, like like an almond butter or something like that might
awesome.
be
Yeah,
good.
that's another way to even get in the fat to pair with microgreens
Yeah.
is nut butters. That's
And it's
great.
not overwhelming because like people think, oh, I gotta like think about it, but it's something you're probably already doing, like whether you're cooking with butter or
Yeah,
olive oil or you're having a salad, like you said. And that's a great thing about microgreens because like if you need to follow a certain diet therapeutically, I mean, there's so many out there today. So I know most of them should be therapeutic and temporary, but you could add microgreens to any type of diet that you
yeah.
need to follow or not follow. I mean, they're great on pizza too. So,
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great
yeah.
point because I always like, from a marketing perspective, I always tell people like if you're going direct to consumer, go out and find like health related Facebook groups that you can post your story and try to promote your microgreens. And pretty much every diet microgreens work in except for the carnivore diet. That's the
Yeah, I
only
would say
one.
yeah, except for that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the only one that wouldn't work.
Yep.
And I don't think if anyone that does that, I don't think they do it for an extended period of time. I think it's like keto, like people can do it,
Mhm.
but I think if you're doing it for like 5 years, it starts getting a
Yeah.
little more difficult. At least that's from what I've heard. I'm not an expert on this, but yeah.
Yeah. And there was a podcast, I forget which one, but I know it was Dr. Zach Bush, and he was
Oh yeah.
saying something where, I've had carnivore, I've known people that followed carnivore and they completely changed their diet and got healthier. And then I'm sorry, I'm not quoting him properly, but and then I have, vegan and plant-based and they completely changed their health for the good. And so what is the commonality? It's what they're not eating and what
Yeah.
you're taking away that's really promoting good health. So, and again, bio-individual. Everyone's different and everyone's gonna, respond better to certain things. But it is really more of, what you take out and then small things of what you put in that matter.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Like you can eat like a really relatively healthy diet, but if you're like eating that healthy diet, like I used to kind of do this. I used to eat like these like great pita salads, and then I would eat like a bag of chips, like a whole bag of chips. When I was a teenager, I was like,
Right.
oh, I'm eating healthy. But if you're eating really healthy, but then you're consuming like half a gallon of ice cream after like eating the healthy food, then it's like,
Yeah.
is that maybe it's more what you're not eating than what you're eating that's making you feel better.
Right.
Having said that, like I think both are important to focus
Definitely.
on both. Yeah.
Definitely. And to enjoy food and enjoy life too. Like you're not going to nitpick. Like most of my customers are restaurants, you're not going to nitpick. Like they make amazing dishes. I'm not going to nitpick and ask every single ingredient. I'm just going to enjoy that food. And
Yeah.
that is part of digesting too, is getting this into this rest and digest state and being appreciative of your food and taking a deep breath and just being in a calmative state when you eat, because our stomach is a muscle, right? So if we're angry
Yeah.
and tense, that's another point about digestion.
Yeah,
Really.
that's great. I'm glad you mentioned that because yeah, when I was when I went through that whole leaky gut thing, I was having obviously a lot of upset stomach symptoms
Mhm.
pretty frequently, and a lot of it came down to like stress and IBS are pretty highly related. And I think there's more and more information on that now. But
Right.
yeah, like to digest food well, you really have to be in a more calm state if you're really in like a go 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 kind of state
Right.
and trying to do the next thing with work. Like you're not going to digest your food as well, and your body will
Chronic
feel it.
stress is definitely, the driver to many, many illnesses today, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just finding a balance.
So let's move on to production, which is something that I'm pretty passionate about. I've always been very into microgreens farms, how they're actually producing the microgreens and what their kind of life is like as a microgreens farmer. So it'd be great if you can walk through like an average week for you as a microgreens business owner.
Yeah, so the big days for us is Monday is planting day, Wednesday is harvest, and Thursday is delivery day. So in between, I kind of strategically try to plan and prep for those big 3 days, in between, as far as like, whether it's prepping for those days, getting our orders ready, our labels, harvest bins, like all of those nitty gritty little tasks to prep.
Yeah.
So it's easier for those big days, getting our invoices ready, making sure we have plenty of inventory, and then just carving out time too to handle the business side, right? Because other than production, it's also carving time for accounting and marketing and more client leads. So it's hard as a small scale to kind of, and obviously as a business owner in general, no matter what industry you're in, is to wear so many hats. So you have to really time manage pretty well with all of that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, scheduling for me has been such a game changer. I used to just like do different things and not really think
Mhm.
about not being intentional with how I'm doing them or how the time is allocated. Just I'm like, they need to be done. We have more customers now. We gotta move faster and do
Mm.
things more efficiently. But to really be intentional and be like, okay, I need to allocate 3 hours a week to sales or whatever it is to accounting or whatever it is and kind of like scheduling my time I found
Yeah.
made a big difference in making sure everything got done rather than just focusing on what I kind of wanted to do, which was often production because that's what I loved was actually growing the food as a farmer. But you're right, like you have to wear an unbelievable amount of hats to run a microgreens business. uh, do you and your husband do all the production together? And are you running the farm full time, or are you still kind of working on the other side of the
Yeah,
nutrition?
so yeah, the farm is full time for me. It's kind of shifted more to the farm and taking that more attention. And now that this has been established for 3 years, I started taking slowly on like a few nutrition clients and doing more in-person talks. But in the we also had our second son during all of this.
Oh, oh yeah,
So,
yeah,
so that I was gonna say it's you have to be very mindful and schedule your time, but you also have to understand that there's real life. Oh, I can't get sick today, because it's harvest day. You just have to figure it out. But my husband does work full time, but he does help a lot. I mean, he's been amazing support and does help with the farm as well. Yeah, I have to give him a shout out for putting up with me breaking things around the farm, always repairing. He always says like, "How can I Nicole proof this?" So, but a lot of and it's really right now a family affair. So I have a few family members that are helping out as far as just the big days of I would say production, like packing, and then deliveries. I was
yeah,
doing all of the deliveries myself before my second was born, but then once my second son came, I just knew I had to kind of offset some of this. It's my favorite part delivering because I love to see the customers and the chefs, but I've just learned a different way of communicating with them. And then also I do take over the routes maybe like quarterly or, if someone's out or something happens, just and it's nice to check in that way as well. But I do all the planting. My husband and I kind of take turns with, figuring out the planting as well. I handle all the planting.
nice, awesome. Yeah, it sounds like it's well managed in the people you have helping as well as yourself. But yeah, like I totally get it. My brother has three kids. It's can be
Yeah.
chaotic at times, so I totally get it. And it's also it can be unpredictable. And
Yes.
when your kid gets like a cold or something, and they need more attention, so
Mhm.
I'm glad you have someone doing the deliveries. I was just picturing in my head like you driving with like your son in the passenger seat, and like that would be tough
In the
to.
beginning, it was. I mean, it wasn't. So my oldest is 7.5, and my youngest is like 18, 19 months at this point. But in the beginning, he would come with me for the ride. I mean, sick or not, he would come with me
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
ride because he wasn't in school yet. We do homeschool as well, but
yeah.
we have some hybrid programs and things that we get into. But yeah, in the beginning with my first, he was involved in a lot. He was even helping me wash those trays. I mean, now that he's older, he's helping me dump the trays.
Well, that's
It's really
awesome.
like a family thing. And it's funny, it's this is kind of where it goes back where you think you want to nourish the community and then you don't realize how of an impact it has on your family and your children too. Where, my oldest is making signs for when we first did markets, which we don't do farmers markets anymore because I want to spend time with my family more. But he's making signs to sell microgreens or he wants to make his own blends with the microgreens. So on off days, he's helping me count by fives, the containers. So, incorporate some lessons there. But,
Yeah,
it's
sure.
amazing to see this other side of a positive effect.
Yeah, for sure. That's like one of the reasons I got into growing food is it's such a positive thing. Like there's so many careers where you can weigh in the negatives and the positives. And I just found it was so easy with farming to be like, this is just like a win-win in so many ways. And that's a great like business to have, younger kids kind of be involved in because they see this is good for the planet, it's good for people, it's good for us. It's you're moving your body, it's you're growing really healthy food. It's really great to incorporate family into that, and yeah, just all the positive benefits that come from that and all the learning opportunity.
Yeah, the learning. And then also, I was just going to say too, the younger you introduce them to healthy foods, the easier it is as well. It's really hard to backtrack. It's possible, but it's really hard to backtrack and reverse that in
Yeah,
children.
yeah. And also like the social influence of the people that they're in school with. If everyone's, it can be hard if everyone's eating like Kit Kat bars,
Yeah.
and then you have
Yeah.
your kid has a microgreen
Oh, it gets
salad.
impossible as they get older
Yeah,
to control
yeah.
it, but if they
Do
have
the
a
best you can.
foundation, right, at
Yeah, for
home,
sure.
yeah,
And
they know.
if they eat it at a young age, they're more likely to like recognize the flavor and be like, "Oh, this is good, and I feel good eating this," which I
Right.
think is a connection that most people only make at a much older age. That the food they
Yeah.
eat and how they feel. And I feel lucky that I made that. And I'm still, to be honest, I'm still making that connection, still cutting out things that don't make me feel good. But it's a process, and having that start at early age is will be much more beneficial for their health in the long run.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear if you have any kind of plans to expand your farm in the future, either in production space or in your customers.
Yeah, so a fun thing, a project that I've been working on the past year is I actually do these local planting workshops. So I call them plant and sips. And we basically, I collaborate with different establishments and venues. Some of my customers, some not, and then that potential leads to a new customer base. But I actually make these mini grow kits, and I don't sell them nationwide or ship them out. I only create these little grow kits for the local workshops, and basically I just come on and I speak just like here, the health benefits of microgreens and how nutritious they are. I talk a little bit about the farm, and then I kind of get into and walk them through these little mini grow kits on how to grow your own. They get to take the grow kit home. They get to sample a bunch of different microgreens that I grow. And I actually have one coming up this weekend. I actually partnered with a chef that I work with, and she's going to create a lunch and a nice spread with the microgreens.
Oh, that's good.
Which is really great. So, it's we pair it with the events with great food, great drinks. It depends on where the event is, but like a plant and sip could mean, it could mean a glass of wine, like at a vineyard, which I did, earlier this year, or it could be at a yoga or Pilates studio and you do a plant and sip with like healthy juices or
Mm.
teas or things like that. So I could get really creative with different local businesses, and it's really fun. And I found this to maybe help push more of that direct to consumer because I don't do farmers markets. I can't speak directly to the consumer. So I found this as a way to help kind of overcome that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that that's great. And it's also uh I think a lot of people kind of solely focus on what makes sense for the business, and then don't necessarily try to like find ways to make it fun. So I think it's really important, especially like I think burnout from my experience is the number one reason microgreens farms close shop, not because they're not profitable. So I think like the more fun you can make your business and enjoying the day to day, the easier it is to manage those harder days or those long harvest days that repeat week after week by just making it fun and doing things that you're excited about, like these events that get people to grow microgreens, get people to know more about microgreens, and it's just it sounds like I want to go to one. I want to go to one of these like
They're fun.
one of
They're
these.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. So I'd love to hear kind of if there's any, like, you grow 50 varieties, which
Mhm.
is a lot of varieties of microgreens. Now there's, I don't even know, there's hundreds of varieties, but I feel like you have a good foundation of how to grow microgreens given how many varieties you've grown. Do you
Mhm.
find was there any that were really tough to figure out the growing recipe for? And then like how did you figure out how to grow them?
Yeah, I would say more the specialty side, like the brassicas and the radishes and sunflowers. Those are pretty, as everyone that starts with those. Obviously, I could, you know why, but I would say more of like the bull's blood beet and the beets and the Swiss chard. Actually, I find the Swiss chard easier than the beet to grow, but and maybe the basil. Just figuring out the length of grow for my space. I had the germ down pretty well. I found maybe adding some humidity domes helped a little bit just for a portion of the grow. But just the length of time in my space, my personal grow space, was trying to figure that out so I could time it with my orders.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking you're in that like building outside of your house. Do you find there's a lot of seasonal variability in temperature inside the space?
Yeah, even for an indoor facility, I do find the room shifts with the
Yeah.
season. So we're kind of like heading into the temperature just dropped. We're in the fall right now, and I feel like this is our best. Like we are kind of built for like fall winter grow. This once it gets warmed in the spring and the summer, we kind of have to shift gears a little bit, which is
Mhm.
it's very interesting because you think indoor you can really control, and you can, but it's just I found that interesting as the season shift.
Yeah, even when I grew in my house or when we expanded into an actual like commercial facility, there's still a like even if you have really well designed HVAC,
Mhm.
and there's always going to be a certain amount of variability if the weather outside changes drastically from season to season. Um,
Right.
Now you can definitely minimize it so it doesn't have a major impact, but we always found our yield was a few percent, maybe 2-3% higher in the summer months than it was in
Mhm.
the winter, which when you're growing a lot of trays can you'd be like, oh, we have 10 extra pounds of this product, and it's like, why do we have that? And then it came down to it's impossible to get the exact same climate unless you want to spend a lot of money on like proper like insulation and ventilation. Most it's just not worth the difference. But yeah, there definitely is that variability. Would you have a different amount of days to maturity for things like basil in the summer months than the winter months?
Um, yeah, I would say like the initial finding the initial grow, and it hasn't really changed too much with
Okay.
that. It does kind of stay between, I don't know, I'm kind of getting it back in my order. So now I'm kind of like shifting to remember. But I know that, the cilantro is like, maybe between 15 to 17 days. And then the basils are more like 20 to 20. I mean, the longer they grow, the more beautiful they are
Yeah.
to that point. So I try to kind of grow as far out as I can and just time it properly. But um, very slight shifts. I think it's more really getting that the germ down. And I found the humidity domes really help the basils a lot indoor for us.
Yeah. I find basil is one crop that we really specialized in
Hmm.
because being where we're like in the climate we're in, uh, basil can be grown maybe 3 months a year outdoors and actually have harvestable product. And then the rest of the year it's imported from Colombia or Florida, places like that, where by the time it actually gets here, the quality is so bad.
Yeah.
So we really had like a niche there. So we focused on it. And one thing that's really interesting with uh, basil in general, but micro basil, is the ideal growing temperature is 80, I believe it's 87 Fahrenheit, which is like insane to
Mhm.
think about because most microgreens like
Yeah.
love, 20, well, I guess 70 Fahrenheit, 75
Hmm.
Fahrenheit, 80, generally is like close to the max that I'd recommend. Um, but basil will have the fastest growth in that 87, which is that's
Hmm.
like must be close to 30. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's about 30 degrees Celsius. So it's not comfortable of an
Yeah,
environment to
the
want to
weather.
work in. But it was just interesting because it really drove how we just determine the optimal temperature in our system, because we were able to get micro basil down to 15 days to like a good harvestable size with
Wow.
lots of true leaf. And light levels are important, but temperature is really a big determining factor. So what a simple thing that people can do that do grow basil is they can just put it on the higher shelves on your rack, because even though you may not think about it, especially in the cold winter months, that cold air kind of sinks and
Mhm.
stays at the lower level. So if you
Right.
put it at the higher level, it'll be more consistent temperature throughout the colder months. Uh,
And that's why the humidity domes for us work because it kind of creates
uh,
its own little climate, right?
oh, I thought so.
So
Is that do you use it just in germination, or do you also use it when it's actually growing?
no, so like I did start just in germination, but then I actually found I stack my basil. I
Mhm.
kind of play around with it. It depends on the season too, but I stack it for a few days. I do like a day or two blackout, and then it goes into the like in humidity domes.
Oh, cool. Whoa.
So I found like growing them up until maybe a few days, maybe a week prior to harvest, just to have that air flow once it gets to a really good size. But I found keeping them in the humidity domes kind of creates their own little climate, and that makes sense
Yeah,
because they love the heat.
yeah, that's cool. I know a lot of people use them in for like sunflower to like help the shells come off,
Right.
or in germination. Sometimes people use them to keep
Mhm.
the moisture in. That's cool. That's another like useful use case for
Just make
humidity domes.
sure I get the humidity domes that have like the airflow, like those little ones are good, but only for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you don't have a hole in that thing,
Mhm.
that's just a call it for mold.
Once they're out of germ, I should say,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, for sure. So as a microgreens business owner running your farm for the last 3 years, if you had to pick one challenge that was the most difficult one you overcame, what would you think that is?
Yeah, so this one actually gets personal a little bit because I was thinking about it and I'm like, well, is it part of the business? I mean, there's so many challenges, right? As a
Yeah,
business owner, as a farmer in general, you're always dealing with that. You have to be a really great problem solver and you have to learn to adapt in this business and whatever business you own. A personal challenge for me, and this kind of goes back to the nutrition of microgreens, is back in June of this year. We're recording now, it's what, October. Back in June this year, I was actually diagnosed with melanoma skin cancer. And I was, I was blessed. We found a great doctor, and we were able to extract the cancer out. There's no residual cancer in me anymore. I just have to go back for skin checks and checkups more regularly. But we caught it very early. It was, stage 0, in situ, they call it. And I was very blessed that we caught it very early. And to go back to the nutrition part, it's like, it's so funny that you mentioned the cancer cells earlier in this interview, because we do all have some things we can't control, like our environment, but some things we can control, like our diet. And I found that maybe these past 3 years, 10 plus years in nutrition, right? Or maybe these 3 years of eating and growing microgreens, maybe that allowed me to have that stage 0, and it wasn't, further along than when we found it. So you have to find the blessing in it. But I would have to say that was definitely a challenge. But you could bet, like any, hardworking business owner, I was the next few days. I think it was like a 2 week recovery time, but I was still harvesting microgreens with stitches in my backs.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad everything's okay. I'm very
Thank
glad to
you.
hear that.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, like you just said, the spirit of what I've seen of farmers in general, whether it's microgreen farmers or other farmers, is like the resilience
Mm.
is bar none. I've never met another career path where there's so much resilience as in farming. There's so many challenges to get through, and because it's year round and you don't get that break to just stop and focus on like big picture kind of thinking about what are the next steps, where what you kind of get with an outdoor farm that has a seasonal winter, where you stop growing, you get that kind of reflection period, which you don't
Right.
always get
That's
with
true.
microgreens.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always kind of go go go,
Yeah.
and I'm glad, like that's such a healthy perspective to take, is like it could have been much more advanced without it, rather than like what I think the what
What did I
sometimes
do
people
wrong?
will say is
Yeah.
like, oh, like you eat healthy, how can that happen? And it's
Right.
like there's so many factors at play, like you said, environment, mindset, what you actually eat, that can affect those type of things. Genetics is a big one too.
Yeah. I'm
That
so
goes,
happy, yeah, that you mentioned that, because like we're talking about food and what you eat, but health is so much more than that.
yeah,
It's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. There's so many outlets to it. And we were talking about how stress is just a chronic driver, and it's go, 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 go. So this was like my
yeah,
pause, right? Like
yeah,
that
yeah,
allowed
for
me to
sure.
have a clearer vision and role of the business and where I want it to go. And it's just a reminder, we don't have much time, on here. What do you want to do with your life, and how do you want to spend it?
Exactly, exactly. I think that's a amazing perspective to have, and I think I found for me, mindset in business is so critical to getting through the challenges, and putting yourself sometimes on purpose in discomfort, to be able to make it easier when there is discomfort that's not known, whether it's in business or personal. I find helps a lot in kind of managing this, like knowing that you can handle things that you purposely put yourself into makes it easier to handle things that just in life just kind of happen. And I found I could talk for days about just the challenges that in a 10-year career in farming that you face, but resilience is critical, and having a good mindset and understanding that there's, like, in every obstacle there is a solution and a benefit from that obstacle, and sometimes it takes years in advance to have that actually kind of play out. From every bad thing that happens, I think that there is a good thing, and it's a good mindset to have when running any business, but a farm, given that's what we're talking about, to kind of focus on, what am I learning from this, and how can I move forward to advance whatever it is, personal or work related goals. Um, yeah,
Definitely. And like what you said before too, is making it fun and finding that gratitude and joy. And that's really like my mission statement, is growing functional food with gratitude and joy. You have to find the gratitude and you have to find the joy, even if it's for like 1 minute,
yeah,
one
yeah,
moment every day. You have to go back to your why and why you started. And maybe that why changes and evolves as your farm changes, but you always have to go back to that.
yeah. And when you do those kind of practices, you can often feel them. You can feel the lightness and the freedom of being grateful for, being able to have a farm, or, it doesn't really matter what it is. I just kind of keep bringing it back to farming, but
Yeah.
to just be able to grow food and feed people and be grateful for that when there's a challenge can like really
Hmm.
change how you feel during challenging and difficult times running a business.
And the plants feel it too.
Yes, yes. Wait,
Yeah.
I have a funny quick story I want to share that kind of ties into this really well. So friends of friends started this juicing company, and they would play, I think it was 527 like healing frequency
Hmm.
to the
Hmm.
juice.
Yeah.
And I remember trying it for the first time and being blown away. Like
Mhm.
I didn't know any of this when I drank it.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, this is like crazy. Like you feel like this
Mhm.
calmness from drinking this juice. And I was like, there's something here. And for a while I tried to explore with the farm. I set up this like whole Google Home, playing music for the plants overnight in the farm.
That's
And
amazing.
I wasn't able to replicate what happened with the juice, but it was just like a whole side thing. I got so into like frequency of sound, and how it
Mhm.
affects like, plant growth. And I wish there was more science on it.
I
Like,
know.
not that science is needed to believe it, but
Right.
just to understand the specifics on like step by step how to incorporate these kind of healing frequencies into food, I think
Yeah.
would just transform like how people consume food, and it'd be so beneficial and something that's so easy to do. It's just hard to, at least from my perspective, hard to properly implement it.
Yeah.
But it's just very, very interesting, even
Yes.
concept to like send this like energy through music
Mm.
to the food you're growing, and then having people be able to consume that energy is really what it comes down
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Oh, I love talking about this too because it's just like fires me up. That's why I say with love and gratitude because I don't know if you heard of, and again, there's a Japanese scientist and Dr. Emoto, and he studied the frequency of music and sounds and words. And and I'm botching this study again too, but just summarizing here, he would put these frequencies up against water, and then he would crystallize and freeze and crystallize the water and look under a microscope, and what he found was these very negative music, hateful words and vibrations. They would create these ugly crystals under the microscope, and then these high frequency words and beautiful music would create these beautiful crystals and like snowflakes or something under the microscope. And the most beautiful one and highest frequency words were love and gratitude. So and so it's funny, again, I don't know if you can obviously replicate that in the plants, but I think the closest thing is to help replicate it in you. And that ties back to microgreen nutrition. And yes, we're nourishing our community, but what I've been through too, it's like you need to nourish yourself, and the more work you do on yourself helps your business and your farm in the long run.
100%. I couldn't agree more. If anyone's interested in, because I've gone down this path researching this stuff, and I found a really great book called Levels of Energy by Frederick Dodson.
Mhm.
It's a great way to break down like emotion and the energy behind it.
Mhm.
And I think this, where love is, pretty close to the highest frequency you can
Yes.
get. But it's helpful to understand when you're like, just again, from even just from a business perspective, when you're in a state of like worrying about competition in your farm, you're in a lower energy state, and it takes away energy for you to actually run your business. Because like, it's like when you run, it's tiring at first, but it actually gives you energy because you're kind of like
Right.
nourishing your body with new blood flow. And having higher frequency emotions allows you to actually have more energy to run your business. So it's kind of off topic but on topic. But just
Yeah.
anyone that's interested, I think it was a profound change for me in understanding that stuff that just, they don't teach in school, and not Western science based. But from my experience, I think a lot of people's experience, it seems real and it seems true. And I go based on that rather than just science. And I think that's,
Yeah,
a
that'd be
better teaching mechanism.
a beautiful
Yeah.
blend of both. And I have to correct myself. It was love and gratitude. I'm sorry, with Dr. Emoto, it wasn't gratitude and joy. I have
Okay.
that as my saying, but love and gratitude is the highest.
Awesome. So one last question, which is my
Yeah.
favorite question to ask farmers, is if you can go back 3 years ago when you started your farm and meet the Nicole from 3 years ago, what advice would you give her to set her up for success in this
Yeah.
business?
Other than what we just spoke about of, prioritizing your health as a business owner, it would have to be more on the sales side, I would say. It's like, stay confident when, conducting sales and reaching out to customers, and don't feel like you're a bother. Everyone's busy and people forget it's not anything to do with you. So, just be more confident in your approach and don't be afraid to follow up.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think that's great advice. I think like confidence in sales is
Mm.
so important. And for me, like I had no confidence in sales when I started. And just by doing more and just
Yeah,
continuously putting yourself out there will build that confidence. And then it gets easier each time. So each time you go out and try to get a sale, it will be easier than the last one. I can almost guarantee that. After doing it for a relatively short period of time, you're like, oh, this is so easy. I can do this all the time if I need to. So having that confidence and just putting yourself out there and continuously trying, I think, can make a really, really big difference in the success of your farm.
definitely.
Awesome. So if listeners want to connect more with you or learn more about your farm, where can they find you online and on social media?
Yeah, so my website is tinygreensfarm.com. My handle is tinygreensfarm on social media. And you could always email me if you ever have any questions. It's hello@tinygreensfarm.com.
Awesome. Awesome. This was a great conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like I learned a lot, and I can imagine all the audience is going to learn a lot too. So thank you so much for coming on, Nicole, and for sharing your wisdom on nutrition and microgreens with everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Microgreens Mastery podcast. To access a wealth of insights, just click the subscribe button, stay notified about each new episode, and enjoy all of this wisdom for free. If you're ready to supercharge your microgreens business, visit microgreensconsulting.com for a gold mine of guides and resources. We've transformed thousands of microgreens businesses, and you're invited to join the success story. Let's stay connected. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Microgreens Consulting for exclusive content and expert tips and wisdom. If you found this episode insightful, please leave us a review, spread the word, and let's share microgreens magic with the world. Until next time, let curiosity fuel your growth, and may happiness be your harvest. Happy growing, everyone.